Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we get into it, I want you to just take a second and try to imagine a very specific kind of heat. Not like a dry desert heat, but a suffocating, heavy, wet blanket of humidity, the kind you really can't escape.
Yeah, the kind that just instantly sticks your shirt to your back the second you walk outside.
Exactly. We are heading down to the bluffs of Natchez, Mississippi today. And this is a place where the air is so thick with moisture and with history that it almost feels like you're breathing in the past with every single inhale. We're diving into a story where, the magnolias are blooming, sure, but the roots are tangled up in something much darker and much bloodier.
It is honestly the perfect setting for the text we're analyzing today, which is Mississippi Blood by Greg Iles.
Yeah.
And let's just be clear right off the bat here. This isn't your standard breezy airport paperback thriller. This is a very dense, incredibly atmospheric exploration of the American South.
That's a massive undertaking.
It really is. Technically, it's the conclusion to his Natchez Burning Trilogy, but the way Iles writes it totally stands as this monolithic story on its own. It's a narrative about the absolute limits of family loyalty and the poisonous legacy of the civil rights era.
And when we say poisonous, we aren't speaking metaphorically at all. We're talking about a town where the past isn't just some history lesson. It is a living, breathing threat to the people there right now. The central conflict we're looking at today is explosive. We have this character, Dr. Tom Cage, who's known as the Saint of Natchez, and he's accused of murdering his former nurse, a woman named Viola Turner.
Right, but to really understand the gravity of that accusation, we have to unpack that saint archetype a bit. Tom Cage isn't just a beloved local doctor. In this community, he is basically Atticus Finch with a stethoscope. I mean, for 40 years, he was the white doctor who treated black patients when literally no one else in town would touch them.
He's delivering babies in shacks out in the county.
Exactly. He's treating infections without ever asking for payment. He is the unquestioned moral compass of this town. So when he is suddenly accused of murder, it's not just a crime. It's a complete shattering of the town's identity. It breaks the way they see themselves.
Which brings us to the real mission of this deep dive. We need to look way beyond the standard did he do it mystery mechanics. We're going to dissect what this book tells us about the unwritten law of the South, which is a concept we will define for you shortly. And we want to look at the incredibly violent lengths people will go to protect, or in some cases, destroy their own blood.
And blood is absolutely the operative word here. It works on a couple different levels throughout the narrative. You have blood as lineage, right? Who your father is, which in the South is everything. And then you have blood as violence. Like, what are you willing to physically spill to keep a secret buried forever?
Let's start with our protagonist, Penn Cage. He is Tom's son, and he also happens to be the mayor of Natchez. But I was really struck while reading by how little mayoring he actually does. He isn't out there cutting ribbons for new supermarkets. He's basically just trying to stay alive.
Yeah, Penn is in a wretched psychological state when we pick up this story. If you're looking for a stoic, unflappable hero, this is not it.
What?
Penn is actively grieving his fiancée, Caitlin. She was murdered by a white supremacist splinter group called the Double Eagles. So he is operating on pure adrenaline grief and intense paranoia.
He travels everywhere with armed bodyguards.
He has to. He is a man who has seen the legal system completely fail to protect the people he loves. And now he is watching his father, his absolute hero, being dragged into the mud.
And the charge against Tom Cage is just so specific and ugly. He's accused of murdering Viola Turner, who was his nurse for a long time. Viola was a black woman who was terminally ill with cancer, and she died of an adrenaline overdose.
Right. Now, initially, the defense team wants to frame this as a mercy killing. Euthanasia, basically. The narrative they want to sell to the public and the jury is that the good doctor saw his dear friend suffering terribly and helped her end it on her own terms.
Which is still a crime legally. But it's a moral crime. It's not malicious.
Exactly. It's sympathetic. But the prosecution led by District Attorney Shad Johnson is absolutely not buying that narrative. Johnson frames this as a cold-blooded cleanup operation, a murder to enforce silence.
Because, and here's where that pristine saint image really starts to crack. Tom Cage and Viola Turner weren't just colleagues.
No, they were not. They had a secret, a massive, life-altering secret. They had a love affair spanning decades, starting way back in the turbulent 1960s. And that affair produced a son named Lincoln Turner.
This revelation just totally deconstructs the hero myth of Tom Cage. It suggests that his public benevolence came with a side of massive private hypocrisy.
It perfectly mirrors the duality of the South itself. You have the moonlight and magnolias on the surface, the polite, integrated, progressive society that Tom Cage pretended to live in, and then you have the reality underneath, a secret black family that he refused to acknowledge publicly because it would have cost him his standing in the white community.
Let's talk about that secret son, Lincoln Turner. Because when he steps onto the page, he isn't there for some tearful Hallmark Channel reunion. The guy is vibrating with rage.
Lincoln is such a fascinating character study. He is successful, he is wealthy, he is brilliant. In a lot of ways, he is exactly like Tom Cage, but he hates his father. He views Tom not as a protector, but as the man who turned his mother into a shameful secret.
He believes Tom's refusal to acknowledge them destroyed Viola's life long before the cancer ever did.
Right. Lincoln isn't looking for a payout. He's looking for absolute destruction. He wants to tear down the Cage legend and expose the rot underneath.
So you have this incredible tension driving the story. Penn Cage is the loyal son, frantically trying to save the myth of his father, and Lincoln Turner is the rejected son, desperate to burn it all down. It's very Cain and Abel, but they are fighting over the soul of the father.
And while this intense Shakespearean family drama is playing out in the foreground, the external threat is closing in fast. We have to talk about the antagonist here, a man named Snake Knox.
Snake Knox. I mean, even the name sounds like something you'd find curled up under a rotting log. He's the head of the Double Eagles.
Think of the Double Eagles as the KKK, but completely stripped of any fake pretense of heritage or ideology. They are distilled down to pure sadism. They call themselves soldiers of an invisible empire. But what Iles does so brilliantly with this text is he updates the threat. Snake isn't just some old racist in a hood burning crosses. He has evolved.
That was a massive takeaway for me. He's not living in the past. He has actively allied his group with a biker gang called the Varangian Kindred, or VK.
Yes. This represents the mutation of hate. The racial terror of the 1960s has merged with the profit motives of modern organized crime. Snake is running drugs, he's moving guns, and he has leveraged the secrets of the town to make himself completely untouchable.
He has blackmail material on everyone. Judges, police officers, politicians.
He operates with total impunity because he knows exactly where all the bodies are buried, often because he's the one who buried them.
There was a scene early on that perfectly captures his reach.
Yeah.
And it genuinely terrified me. Penn Cage is at a gas station. Now remember, he's the mayor. He has armed bodyguards waiting right outside the door. He goes into the men's room, and a VK biker just casually corners him at the urinal.
It's a profound violation of space and safety. The message is not subtle at all.
The biker delivers this message from Snake. He says wives and children have no immunity.
That line signals the definitive death of the old code. I mean, even in traditional mafia structures, or even in the twisted logic of old Southern blood feuds, families were generally considered off limits. You didn't go after the kids.
Right, there were rules, dark rules, but rules.
Exactly. Snake is saying, I will kill your daughter, I will kill your mother, there are no rules anymore. It creates this suffocating atmosphere where Penn realizes his title as mayor and his guys with guns out front mean absolutely nothing.
And Snake proves he isn't bluffing. The attack on Keisha Harvin, that was one of the hardest parts of the book for me to read.
It is visceral and horrific, but it is so essential to understanding the stakes of this world. Keisha is a young, really tenacious Black reporter. She's actively investigating the Double Eagles. She's asking the questions that the polite society of Natchez actively ignores. So Snake sends Wilma Dean, who is essentially his henchwoman, to silence her.
And Wilma throws acid in Keisha's face.
She blinds her. It destroys her face entirely. It's an act of savagery that feels almost medieval in its cruelty.
And it serves a huge narrative purpose because it radicalizes Penn. Up until this point, Penn is still a lawyer at heart. He still believes on some fundamental level in the system. But when he sees Keisha destroyed like that, he realizes the law is totally impotent against men like Snake Knox.
Which leads to that incredible scene at the Country Cafe, spelled with a K naturally, where Penn walks in, finds a known double eagle, and just straight up puts a gun to the man's gut.
The mayor of the town going full vigilante in a diner.
He is looking right into the abyss. He threatens them with the story of Jack Hinson, who was a Civil War sniper who went on a personal revenge killing spree. Penn is signaling to them and to the reader that he is done with the courts. He is ready for blood.
And this perfectly sets the stage for the courtroom drama. Because while Penn is embracing violence outside the courthouse, the actual battle for Tom's life is happening inside it. Right. Let's shift to that courtroom. The setting itself is drenched in irony.
Oh, heavily. You have Judge Joe Elder presiding, who is a Black judge, but Hanging right there in his courtroom is the Mississippi state flag.
Which at the time the book was said still featured the Confederate battle emblem in the corner.
It's theater of the absurd. You have a black judge, a black victim, and a white defendant who is this huge civil rights icon, all proceeding under the shadow of a symbol of slavery. It visually represents the entire conflict of the book, the New South trying to emerge from the suffocating shadow of the old.
Now, the listener critique specifically asked us to break down the unwritten law. This is the absolute core of the legal strategy in this trial. But it sounds very counterintuitive. Usually lawyers argue the written law. What exactly is this concept?
The unwritten law is a terrifying historical reality of the Southern legal system. It wasn't in the law books, obviously, but it was implicitly understood by every single white juror. Essentially, it was a form of jury nullification.
Okay, so ignoring the letter of the law to achieve a specific outcome.
Precisely. It meant that if a white man committed violence, whether that was a lynching, a murder, an assault to protect his honor, his property, or specifically white womanhood, the jury would acquit him regardless of how overwhelming the evidence was. It was the legal mechanism by which white supremacy was enforced.
So it was basically a get-out-of-jail-free card for white violence against black people.
That's exactly what it was. Now here is where the legal chess match in this book gets so fascinating. The prosecutor, Shad Johnson, is a smart guy. He knows Tom Cage is a white legend in this town. So in his opening statement, he explicitly warns the jury against using the unwritten law. He effectively says, do not let this man walk just because he is a white icon. That is the old way, and we are past that.
But the defense attorney, Quentin Avery, totally flips the script. And Quentin is a legend in his own right. He's an elderly, wheelchair-bound, black civil rights lawyer.
Quentin does something incredibly risky here. He decides to actively invoke the unwritten law, but in reverse. He argues that the written law has never delivered justice for black people in Mississippi. So he asks the jury to look at the context, the unwritten reality of the 1960s.
He wants them to understand that Tom and Viola were essentially living in a war zone.
Yes. He frames the murder not as a malicious crime, but as a tragic, final act of love and protection in a world that fundamentally wouldn't allow them to be together. He is asking the jury to nullify the law not for hate as it was used historically, but for love.
That is such a high-wire act for a defense attorney. And the testimony during this trial pulls absolutely no punches. Lincoln Turner takes the stand against his own father.
And his testimony is devastating. Lincoln doesn't just give facts, he gives raw emotion. He describes his mother Viola as a husk. He says she was hollowed out by 40 years of waiting for a man who would never publicly claim her. And then he reveals on the stand that he burned her will.
Which is wild. Why did he do that? The prosecution tries to argue he did it for the inheritance to hide where the assets were going.
But Lincoln makes it crystal clear. He did it to erase Tom Cage from Viola's history. He didn't care about Tom's money. He wanted to sever the connection completely. It just shows the absolute depth of his hatred.
And then there is the testimony of Cora Revels, who is Viola's sister. This was the moment where the family secrets really spilled out for everyone to see. She admits on the stand that the family knew about the affair all along. They knew Lincoln was Tom's son, but they lied to Lincoln for his entire childhood.
They told him he was a product of a clan rape.
I just want to pause on that for a second. Imagine the psychological damage of that. You grow up believing your father was a faceless monster who assaulted your mother in a hate crime, and that you eventually find out your father is actually the town hero, the doctor everyone loves, but he just won't look at you.
It explains Lincoln's blinding rage perfectly. It wasn't just the abandonment, it was a fundamental lie about his core identity. The family thought they were protecting Viola's dignity by hiding the affair, but in doing so, they deeply traumatized the child. It shows how the culture of secrecy in the South often destroys the exact people it's supposed to protect.
While the courtroom is tearing the family history apart, Penn realizes he can't win this on defense alone. He needs an alternative suspect. He has to prove Snake Knox had a specific reason to kill Viola. And this leads him to the Bone Tree.
The Bone Tree is one of the most haunting locations in the entire text. It's located deep in the Loosahachie Swamp. Penn teams up with Serenity Butler, who is a famous author visiting town. She acts as this crucial outsider perspective for Penn, and they track down a survivor named Dolores St. Denis.
Dolores is a really tough interview scene to read. She's an older woman with a walker who has been living with this horrific trauma for 50 years.
She reveals the true depths of the Double Eagles' depravity. They didn't just kill civil rights workers for political reasons. They were violent sexual predators. She describes how she and her husband were stopped by the Double Eagles in the 60s. Her husband was lynched right there, and she was raped by the group, including Snake Knox and his brother.
But the direct connection to the current murder case is Viola.
Yes. Dolores reveals that Viola Turner was there too that night. Viola was also a victim of the Double Eagles in the 60s. Snake Knox and his brother raped and tortured her specifically to punish her for being what they called uppity and for her known relationship with Tom Cage.
This changes everything about the present-day timeline. It means Snake Knox didn't just hate Viola in the abstract way a racist hates a black person. He had committed a violent capital felony against her. He had a very real, very personal motive to silence her before she died.
Because if she confessed to her son or the police on her deathbed, Snake could finally go down for those old crimes.
Exactly. It creates a highly credible alternative theory for the defense. And then Lincoln reveals he has a tape, an actual audio recording of Snake Knox and another Double Eagle explicitly threatening Viola shortly before she died.
This completely shifts the narrative from Tom killed her to hide his shame to Snake drove her to death to hide his crimes.
Which catapults us toward the climax and most unlikely team-up in the book, Penn and Lincoln. The legitimate son and the secret son.
They are forced to align. They finally realize Snake is hiding out in Rodney, Mississippi.
I actually looked up Rodney after reading this section. It's a real place.
It is, and it's the perfect Gothic setting for the showdown. It was once a bustling river town, but the Mississippi River literally changed its course. It moved west, leaving the town high and dry. The population vanished. Now it's this ghost town swallowed by kudzu with crumbling brick churches and empty storefronts. It represents the Old South that refuses to die, but is just rotting away in the dark.
So Penn and Lincoln drive into this swamp at night. The atmosphere is just terrifying. They find the shack where Snake is hiding out with his illegitimate son, Alois, and Wilma Dean, the acid thrower.
The confrontation in that shack is electric. You have Snake's son, Alois, who gives this deeply unsettling monologue. He talks about the mechanics of killing a person with an air bubble, creating a vapor lock in the heart so it looks exactly like a natural heart attack.
And he's bragging about it.
Right. It shows that the evil has been successfully passed down. Snake hasn't just survived, he has bred a whole new generation of killer.
But then we get the twist. They have Snake at gunpoint. Penn demands the truth. He screams at him, "Did you kill Viola?"
And Snake says no. He drops a bomb that I don't think anyone saw coming. He claims that Peggy Cage Penn's mother, Tom's wife, was the one who actually administered the lethal injection.
The wife.
Yeah.
The quiet, loyal woman who stood by Tom through all the scandals in the trial.
Snake's story, and we have to remember he is a master manipulator, but this has a real ring of truth to it, is that Peggy found out about the terminal cancer and the pain. She went to Viola perhaps to confront her, perhaps to genuinely help her, and tried to administer the mercy killing herself, but botched it. And that Tom Cage took the blame not to save his own reputation, but to save his wife from going to prison.
That reframes the entire novel. If that is true, Tom isn't a hypocrite protecting his image. He's a devoted husband protecting his wife. But we have to be so careful here because Snake is a psychopath. He could be lying just to twist the knife one last time before he dies.
And that is the brilliance of Iles' writing. We don't get a neat DNA test. We don't get a verified video confession. We just get this seed of doubt planted right in the middle of the chaos. But before they can even process it, the shooting starts.
I've turned this into a full-blown chaotic action sequence. Penn shoots Alois. They decide they need Wilma Dean alive to testify, so they grab her and throw her in the back of the truck. And then we get this frantic high-speed chase through the mud in the swamp.
It's incredibly kinetic. You have the VK bikers chasing them on motorcycles and lifted trucks. Lincoln is leaning out the window of their truck with a high-powered rifle, just picking them off in the dark. It's violent and loud and chaotic. And in the end, Snake Knox, the untouchable, invisible Emperor of Natchez, meets a very messy end. He gets run over by the truck.
Roadkill. It feels fitting for him.
It really does. It's a sudden, violent, unglamorous end for an absolute monster.
Afterwards, Penn and Lincoln manage to escape on Snake's speedboat. They are drifting down the Mississippi River. The sun is just starting to come up. They are covered in mud and blood, completely exhausted. And there is this rare moment of calm. Penn quotes Serenity Butler's book about Mississippi blood.
He says it has river turpentine and cotton poison in it, but it is beat, but not broke. It's a profound moment of connection. They finally acknowledge their shared heritage. They are both sons of Mississippi. They share the same father. They have both been broken by the secrets of this town, but they are still standing.
But the ending of the book, I have to say it's not tied up in a neat little bow.
No, and honestly, it shouldn't be. Snake is dead, so he can't testify about the Peggy accusation. Wilma Dean survives, but she refuses to talk out of fear or some twisted loyalty. The legal case against Tom kind of dissolves in the chaos of all these new deaths. Charges are stalled or dropped, but the forensic truth, we never find out for 100% certain who pushed that plunger.
We are left with this heavy ambiguity. Tom Cage is a free man, but he is not the saint anymore. He is just a frail old man with way too many secrets.
And Lincoln leaves. He heads north to Chicago, mirroring the Great Migration that millions of Black Americans took to escape the violence of the South. But he leaves with the full knowledge of who he is. He's not Lincoln the Avenger anymore. He's Lincoln Cage Turner. He has finally claimed his blood.
The title Mississippi Blood really works on every single level, doesn't it?
It does. It posits that you can never really escape the blood. The violence of the history, the secrets of the lineage, it is all flowing right there in the veins of the characters.
So if we zoom out for a second, what is the real takeaway here? Why does Mississippi Blood matter beyond just being a really gripping thriller?
I think it matters because it strips away the comforting myth that the legal system solves our deepest problems. We really like to think crime happens, trial happens, truth comes out, justice is served. This book emphatically says no. In a society built on foundational lies like the lie of white supremacy or the lie of the saintly perfect doctor, the law is just a blunt tool. Real justice or real tragedy happens in the dark. It happens in the swamps and in the unspoken secrets between family members.
It asks a terrifying question when you really think about it. Is truth just the story that manages to survive?
That's exactly it. And in Natchez, the ghosts of the past have a very loud voice in deciding which story survives.
Well, that is a heavy note to end on, but a necessary one. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If the law fails to provide justice and vigilante violence, only creates more trauma, what is the actual path forward for a town entirely built on buried bones? Can true reconciliation ever happen without total destruction first? If you want to feel the humidity, the tension, and the absolute weight of this history for yourself, you really have to read the book. The courtroom scenes alone are worth the price of admission.
Absolutely. It's a masterwork of Southern noir.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep digging.